Hey y'all, Bite-Sized Bible in a Year, chronological edition for April 9th. We read 1 Samuel 1:9 through 4:11. So we're getting to see the beginning of Samuel's life in the book of Samuel. Imagine that. But before we really dive into Samuel's life, I want us to hit pause right now and just think about one thing as we're looking at these people that we read about yesterday. And here's what I want us to think about. I want us to think about how we wake up every day and we find ourselves in some sort of situation. It could be the same situation you've been in forever. It could be brand new. It could be somewhere in between. It could be good, bad, somewhere in between, big, small, somewhere in between. It doesn't matter. You wake up and you face this circumstance. You face people every day. My challenge to us today is to remember that our experience of that situation depends on our reaction to it. So what I mean by that is we can put two people in the exact same situation, let them be in that situation for a while, pull them out, and then ask them what their experience was. Depending on their mindset, depending on how they look at it and the things that they did in that situation, that's what determines their experience. So if somebody's super positive and reacts positively, well, then they're going to have a positive reaction or experience of that circumstance. If you have somebody who's super negative and cynical, when you ask them about that situation, you're going to get a totally different experience than the other person had. So our experience of a situation depends on our reaction to it. So let's look at three groups of people in our reading just to kind of look at it from that perspective. So we have Samuel and Hannah. Remember, Hannah was Samuel's mom. She was barren for quite a while. She was suffering because of that in her culture and because of the second wife. Remember, the second wife was mocking her. She cried out to God for a son. He gave her the son. She promised to give God the son back by dedicating him to temple service when he was weaned. And so at around 3 years old, she took him back to the temple and left him there and visited him once a year so he could be raised as in the temple and become a priest. I cannot even imagine as a mom having to do that. But the thing about Samuel and Hannah is they had a heart of worship. And so this group of people is called dedicated servants. Okay, so their reaction to their circumstance was Hannah was in a hard circumstance. However, she had a heart of worship towards God. She gave him, it was born out of the suffering. It was born out of having to let go. If you look at the song and what we read, it was beautiful. And she talks about having strength because God gave it to her. So she has this deeper faith in God because of the suffering that she had gone to. She had a heart of worship born out of suffering and letting go. And then we have Samuel, who had an attitude of worship because he was born in the presence of God. He was born and raised until he was 3 with Hannah. And then it actually says he was raised in the presence of God. So he was right there in the temple every day. And because of that, he was a dedicated servant. And their experience of their situation, they always ended up praising. If you look at her, again, if you look at her song, the things that she said, she was praising God. Well, then we have the later we have the Israelite army. They went into battle, lost. They're like, let's grab that Ark of the Covenant and take that in, like a good luck charm. Maybe we'll win then. Well, they get soundly defeated. They come back and they're all confused as to why they were defeated. And so this group of people is called superstitious frauds. And so I know that's harsh, but are we really following God? Were they really following God? No, they were not. They were going, I'm going to go over here and you come along and do what I say and be my good luck charm, like treating him like he's a rabbit's foot. Superstitious frauds. So their reaction to their experience was to still do it their own way, but say they were following God. And then we have Eli's sons, the priests, who completely disregarded and disrespected their post as priests and went crazy and were doing all kinds of things. It ended in their death because of what they were doing. So they are called disrespectful defectors. So they defected from the ways of God and they disrespected their priesthood and disrespected God. And that ended in death. So my challenge today is, where are you? Whatever circumstance you're finding yourself in today, where are you? Are you trying to foster an attitude of worship? Are you putting your foot down and saying, I will worship God no matter what? Are you having that dedicated servant mentality? Is that your reaction? Because that deliberate dependence will lead you to the things that Hannah and Samuel had, which was praise and singing God's movement and blessing and purpose and strength and joy, that deliberate dependence? Or are we more like having a slow defection where we're kind of going away from God because we don't really trust him? So I'm just more and more every day, I'm just going to take more and more ownership and kind of forget about God. Well, where that ends up is you are completely alone. You're completely alone and trying to do life on your own. And if you've never accepted God at all, that ends in death, eternal separation from God. Or are you dealing with your circumstances every day by this kind of plastic superstition, like saying I'm a Christian but really doing everything on my own and asking God to get on board? Because where that leads is the same place that led the Israelite army, is confusion and disappointment. We don't want to end up there either. So my challenge to us today is, no matter what's going on around us, let's be like Hannah and Samuel, where we are determined to worship and follow God no matter where he takes us, because the end product, our experience, will be to be right in the middle of God's will. And when we're right in the middle of God's will, it's nothing but good fruit. You know what I'm saying? All right. So tomorrow, April 10th, is 1 Samuel 4:12 through 8. So 4:12 through chapter 8, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Farewell.